everyone, Keto and Crime back here with coverage of both Tuesday and Wednesday of this week of the Vallow case. As you know, due to a death in the family of the prosecution, court was suspended on Thursday, but did resume today, Friday. So I will have Friday's update on Monday or over the weekend as quick as I can listen to the recordings and read the summaries. The East Idaho News, thankfully, is posting all of the recordings free of charge on their website. You can get them there, so I'm not having to pay for them. But they are a day behind, so that is the reason that my updates are kind of a day behind. But anyway, it's also just a lot of information to sift through. A lot of recordings that I have to listen to. I listen to them a lot when I'm trying to sleep at night. I do put them on and listen to them. So there's just a lot of information to sift through. So we're going to get started with Tuesday, which as it stands was the first day of actual testimony. Opening statements, as I've already covered, took up most of all of Monday. So Tuesday, you have actual testimony beginning. We do know that the Woodcocks have been present most days, as have Annie Cushing, who is Lori Vallow's ex-sister-in-law, have been there, as well as John Pryor, who is 𝗟𝗏𝗃𝗍𝗍 attorney. I'm sure he's listening to see how this is going to affect his case, which we anticipate will be getting underway in October of this year. But let's get into some of the main takeaways. We go in first to the testimony of Detective 𝗚𝗂𝘂, who was one of the detectives that assisted in the excavation of the Daybell property when the bodies of JJ and Tylee were found. The information I am sharing will be taken from both his direct examination by the prosecution and his cross-examination by Lori's attorney, John Thomas. So basically, he's talking about the activities of June 9th when the bodies were found. He's talking about the condition of the bodies, as well as the cell phone records that enabled them to actually know where Alex Cox was when he sent text messages, as well as the text messages of Chad back to then wife Tammy Daybell about the infamous raccoon. So the main takeaways of the detective's testimony were the condition of the bodies. We're going to first talk about JJ's body, which from testimony was the one that was found outside the infamous pet cemetery near the pond water area. Basically, the most telling part of it is that boards that were also found in Chad Daybell's garage area were found over the body, which is one of the main reasons that they connected the body, other than the fact it was on the property, that connected the body to Chad Daybell. Then the condition of Tylee's body, who was found in the pet cemetery. What we do know is that her body had been hacked up and partially burned. So either the hiding of the body was difficult, or there was a lot of animosity towards her. And I'm leaning toward the latter simply because Tylee was kind of a spitfire. She was not like JJ, who would be, kind of easily manipulated and dealt with. She was a fighter. I'm sure she fought back. I'm sure she gave them tons of trouble before she was killed. So it does not surprise me that parts of her body were removed and she was burned, probably out of anger. And so moving on with the testimony of the detective, they talk about the welfare check they attempted to do at Lori's apartment, as well as the evidence that suggests there was little evidence that JJ was alive after September 22nd, 23rd, 2019, which was when that infamous photo of JJ, Tylee, and Alex Cox was taken at the Grand Canyon. In addition, the detective actually said outright that he believed the attempt on Tammy Daybell's life on October 9th, 2019, when Alex Cox was fingered as potentially firing at her with what she thought was a paintball gun, was an attempted homicide, and he said yes, he does believe that was an attempted homicide, which draws back to the infamous phone call of Lori being mad at Alex because he didn't do the job correctly. Next up, called was Lieutenant Jared Wilmore of Madison County Sheriff's Office. This is where Lori Vallow was being held on June 9th when they had the infamous phone call between her and Chad, where she asked Chad how he was doing. The recording is out there. You can definitely hear it. Basically he said that they were searching the property, seemed really bummed about that because, yes, he was about to be arrested. They did not play the call. I think it's just common knowledge that this has already been played so many times over, but basically the reason for his testimony was to basically testify to the validity of that phone call, how the telephone pods at the jails are set up, and how there's a unique PIN number assigned to them, so there's no way Lori could be mistaken for another inmate. So just really basic stuff there. Then upon further acquiesce from counsel, the call was played for the court, and I will actually put a link to that recording here in the video somewhere so that you can go to that if you want to hear it. Next, we have called Lieutenant Joe Powell from Fremont County Sheriff's Office. And basically, he just says he's been a lieutenant for over 6 years. He oversees patrols, detectives, schedule, looks at report, and assists with everybody in the staff. He had been a detective for over 4.5 years. He was basically called to answer some pretty specific questions. Namely, he was instrumental in some pictures taken of Lori and Chad, admitting those into evidence. Basically, they had been under surveillance and they were eating at a local cafe, and the picture was taken. And then also the entrance of the potential 𝗟𝗂𝗶𝗰 death case in Arizona. He was the one that took that infamous call and kind of brought the two departments together. And then also he was one of the main detectives on the Tammy Daybell case. He said that they opened the case because Tammy was young and in good health, and it seemed just out of nature that she would die so suddenly. And then also how he helped execute the search warrant of Alex Cox's townhome in Idaho, as well as helping with the exhuming of Tammy's body. They reviewed all of Tammy Daybell's medical records and also pulled a report of all her prescriptions from Walmart. Nothing that would indicate serious medical condition was found. Her body showed no signs of high blood pressure and basically showed the picture of a healthy young woman. And then the jury was shown pictures of Tammy Daybell's body during a cross-exam before she was, after the exhumation. And then it was at this point, we're about noon, 11:45 a.m., Idaho time, that the death in the family of one of the prosecutors was brought up, and court was dismissed and held into continuance for 48 hours. So this is where Tuesday kind of ended, and Wednesday's main highlights, and then of course there was no court the next day, and then Thursday we pick up with the case back in action and the testimony of Melanie Gibb. This has been one that has been highly anticipated. Lover or hater, Melanie Gibb is going to be a key player. She was escorted into the courtroom in a hat, dark sunglasses, and was called as one of the very first witnesses. And in direct examination, Melanie talks about how she first met Lori in a church event in 2018. She met Chad about 2 years after that. And she said that when she first met Chad, it was a casual introduction. They periodically saw each other because of his involvement with Lori, but they were not in any way, shape, or form close friends. She said that she considered Lori one of her best friends, and that even though she did not get along with 𝗬𝗏, she said she empathized with 𝗬𝗏, and I'm kind of shuddering because she could have saved these children's lives, but we're not going to get into that. That Lori seemed very distracted, was acting very weird, and that 𝗬𝗏 often seemed very frustrated with her mother and her mother's behavior. Then she talked about in 2019, January, when Lori moved in with Alex for a short time, and then went to Hawaii, then to Texas, and then back to Arizona after Charles had died. And then they go to the infamous ladies' conference in Utah, where supposedly the infamous Chad romance novel took place. I have a video on that if you'd like to watch that. And this is where she met 𝗟𝗏𝗽𝗏, and she said she witnessed some interesting conversation between the two of them. They both seemed very flattered and enamored with each other, and Lori just seemed awestruck because, she had read some of his books. And if you're interested in any of 𝗟𝗏𝗽𝗏's books, I have reviewed them all, summarized them all. Here's a playlist. So they were still married at this time, both Chad and Lori to other people, Chad to Tammy, Lori to Charles, and then Lori started filling her head with all these delusions of grandeur, saying that she had been married to the prophet Moroni from the Book of Mormon, and that her and Chad had been connected in past lives, and that they were meant to be together, and that their mission was to prepare the way for the second coming of Christ. And then 2 weeks after that Utah conference, Chad came to Arizona for another event. Melanie and Lori went to the conference. Then Lori held a meeting at her house. But basically, she said she does not remember if Chad was at Lori's house. She said that Chad and Lori interacted with each other pretty casually at that conference, and that basically this is where Lori got the idea that she had been married to 4 to 5 major characters, and I say that in quotes because that's what Melanie Gibbs said, from the Book of Mormon and the Bible. So Lori was married to everybody from Moroni to, I don't know, maybe she was Eve. We don't know. But that is what she's saying. And then Lori, she said it was at this time that Lori was pretty open about being in love with Chad. And yeah, we know where that got everybody. And then she started talking about preparing, she was one of the 144,000, preparing the way, all of Lori's delusions about herself and about Chad. We also know that on Tuesday when Brandon Boudreaux testified, he testified about how Lori had filled, his wife, former wife, Melanie Palawowski, with all these delusions, and that he also testified about the attempt on his life. So we're seeing how Lori may have had these delusions prior to Chad, but when she talked to Chad and Chad's delusion mixed with her own, yeah, it all sort of spiraled out of control. And then we get into a period of time where Melanie says that Lori really began to change for the worse, that she had told Melanie that Charles, meaning Lori's ex-husband, Brandon, one of Lori's brothers who was not Alex, Lori's dad, 𝗬𝗏𝗽𝗏, Kay, and JJ were all dark. So this is where we first see the whole zombie manifestation came in. And then Melanie says she asked if Tammy Daybell was considered dark, and Lori said that sometime between February and June of 2019 that Melanie was possessed. This is where we get into the whole she wasn't herself, she was possessed by another woman and that she had a plan to do some great things in the afterlife, according to Chad and Lori. And then we get into some more private confessions where Melanie said that Lori and Chad were meeting at hotels and were intimate with each other. I mean, we all knew it was happening, but I think this is the first time it's ever been publicized. And then she talked about the last 2 times she ever saw 𝗙𝗶𝗋𝗀, and that was in August of, sometime between July and August of 2019, when they moved with the kids to Idaho. And then she said after talking, she would call Lori, talk to her, she would hear the kids in the background, and then we skipped to the infamous conference weekend where her and David Warwick went down. And basically, if you want information on Melanie Gibb or David Warwick, I have videos on them as well. Check out my complete Vallow playlist. This is the last time, according to everybody, that JJ was seen alive. And it was after that point that Melanie said that she thought he had gone to live with Jay. He had gone to live with the Woodcocks, and it's just sort of disappeared. And she never saw 𝗙𝗵𝗃 during that weekend, and we kind of know why. So then we talk about the infamous phone call where Chad and Lori are trying to get Melanie to lie, saying that JJ's with them after the Woodcocks had requested the welfare check. And from then, basically the prosecution says no further questions, and cross-exam begins, and they immediately begin to attack Melanie's character. Now, we know there's a lot to attack about Melanie's character, but basically about her own, crumbling marriage, about her affair, quote unquote, with David Warwick. She did say that they are currently married, so I don't know, maybe the rumors of their divorce was kind of, blown out of proportion. And then they get into a lot of Mormon prophecy, LDS prophecy. He asked her who some people were, some demons and some prophets from the Book of Mormon and the Bible, and basically just getting into a whole lot of theology that we knew was really, really crazy. And then a little bit of discussion about 𝗓𝗏, and then pretty much Melanie was let go. And then they call in Chandler, Arizona Police Detective Nathan Duncan. And basically the prosecution begins to question him about details around the investigation into Charles Vallow. And they don't really get into a whole lot that we don't already know, that Charles was scared for his own welfare. He was, saying he felt that Lori was trying to put an end not only to their marriage, but to his life. And then a whole lot of arguing between prosecutors and the defense on whether evidence from Arizona can be admitted. And at that point, the jurors were taken out so that those motions could be argued. The jury was brought back in about 2 o'clock Idaho time, and it continued on with a lot of testimony regarding the blessing that Chad supposedly gave Alex, and that Alex was an angel on earth and would glow. So they're trying to set Alex up as, kind of Archangel Michael. The prosecution has Archangel Michael figure that was kind of Lori's protector, and it just kind of goes into that. They play a recording which kind of goes over the blessing that Chad supposedly gave Alex, and how he's pumping Alex up to be this Michael type figure. And after that, court is adjourned, and that was Thursday. And so it is ongoing right now. As soon as I have a chance to review Friday, I will have a summary out for you on Fridays. But we're now 2 weeks in. The first week, consisted mainly of jury selection, which I went over, and then now opening arguments and the first few witnesses, which have included a lot of law enforcement, Melanie Gibb and Brandon Boudreaux. So a lot of it is stuff we already knew. I am very, very interested to hear all of the all of this theology laid out because I think it's incredibly interesting to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. I know I've reviewed all the books, but you can't, you can't really beat it coming from the source. So I'll be interested to see what shenanigans come out today. And I hope you've enjoyed this very brief 20-minute summary of about 18 hours worth of testimony and recording. So I'll be back soon. Thank you for joining me. And until next time, 𝗙𝗀𝗀𝗏 out.